Let's talk.
Giles Brown.
On the trail of the Kray Twins. The Kray Twins, i.e. Ronnie and Reggie, ruled London's Gangland underworld during the 60s with the ruthlessness rod of iron that still shocks yet captivates young and old to alike, even through to today. Proof of this is On the Trail of the Kray Twins, great new book by Richard C Cobb. I'm delighted to say that he joins me live on the line, I would hope not from the blind beggar, but you never know. Richard, good morning to you, sir.
Yes, good morning yourself, sir. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm very good, thank you. I mean, there is a certain kinship between Marbella and the Kray Twins, which we could explore a bit later. Freddie Ford.
I think, yeah, Marbella has plenty of ex-English gangsters running around the place.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, yeah.
Explain a little bit, for those who don't know, a bit about why you're so eminently qualified to write this particular book.
True crime in general has been a hobby of mine since I was actually about 12 years old. They say every school has a creepy, morbid child. Well, that was me, and I was not good at anything else, so I decided to become a writer and write about true crime. So my passion was to go out and locate all these scenes, these places where history happened. And one of the fascinating aspects of the Krays story was I'd read many books, and they're all about ex-gangsters telling stories about the Krays. But I realized there was no actual book out there which went to all these fabulous locations, all these places where the Krays lived, where they got brought up, where they boxed, the blind beggar shooting, the killing of Jack the Hat McVitie, all these, the graveyard. I mean, all these places exist to this day. Some old pubs are now shops, and that's what I wanted to explore. I want to bring it into the book. So anyone now with my book could arrive in the East End of London and simply walk around these wonderful sites and know exactly what happened there.
Because that's one of the things. Because, I mean, if you were like me and you think that one of the greatest British movies of all time is The Long Good Friday, therefore...
Oh,
there you go. I think we've bonded here, Richard, already, okay, within the first 4 minutes.
Yeah.
But, you know, apart from it being a great film, there's that wonderful Bob Hoskins speech, which seems almost like he had a psychic ball at the time by saying, you know, London's got so much Docklands in its city area and no other city has this. And this is 1980, before they developed Docklands.
That's right, yes.
Now, we go back another leap forward, only 20 years since the Krays, in fact, only 10 years since the Krays basically were put inside, 1969, 1970. So what we're looking at here is a London that many people will thought has been sort of like obliterated or knocked down for, you know, for yuppie apartments as everything was in the mid 80s, but it's still there. The London that we're talking about here hasn't been sort of submerged, has it?
No, it hasn't. Yes, the Docklands has been transformed immensely, but the Krays weren't just in the Docklands. They were further out in towards Bethnal Green, Whitechapel, Hackney, all those areas there. And there's some wonderful old buildings. And in one of the chapters in the book, I talk about the early days of the Krays. Now, their house has been knocked down, but an exact replica of that house, that block that they lived on, still exists on Valence Road, the very road they got brought up in, at the far end of Valence Road. And it's just sitting there, captured in time. And I got these wonderful photographs of it to show people, if you wanted to see what the Krays houses looked like, it's there. That's an exact replica of that block in which they lived, because they were all the same houses along Valence Road. But they were all bulldozed over the years from 1969 onwards. And that block still exists to this day, and it's protected as well, so it won't be getting knocked down anytime soon.
I suppose one of the great things as well is the fact that it hasn't been Disneyfied. I mean, nobody's going like, and here they would, you know, there's no sort of, I don't know, if you go to certain, you know, parts of the world, it's all been a bit sanitized, and it's, you know, if you go into certain parts of London that used to be a little bit colourful, and they've maybe lost some of that colour. But I mean, I remember going to the Bethnal Green Steakhouse, you know, and it was literally everybody was wearing tracksuits and gold chains. It was, I mean, if they made the Sopranos and the only wine we could have was Matthias Rosé. I mean, this is what I'm looking at here, and that's sort of
there is some parts of London, some of my favourite parts too, exactly still like that, and you would swear if you walked up Bethnal Green Road and you were standing outside Pelici's Cafe, which has been there for 100 years in the same family, you'd swear you saw Tony Soprano and his crew sitting outside having a drink. They got the chains on, they got the shirt on, the caps, and you think, God, they're having a gangster meeting. But and that, it still exists. And still, that wonderful Cockney lifestyle still exists in certain pockets around the East End. And that's exactly what I was trying to find in this book. And yes, London is disappearing rapidly, but these pockets still exist. And I would encourage anyone to get down there. I would encourage, buy my book.
Yes,
get yourself down there, with a good camera, and get plenty of good photographs. Because one day it will all be gone. And I think it's a terrible shame. And we've already seen disappearing parts of the West End.
Yeah.
I went to Soho to do some research on a book, and Soho's changed massively now. And luckily, the East End still there, pockets of it, but it is rapidly disappearing.
So was there a sort of, and I don't want to do too many Sopranos references into this, but was there a sort of clubhouse or a cafe that they kind of worked? What was their centre of operations, if you like?
Well, the main centre of operations, believe it or not, was actually their mother's house.
Okay.
At 178 Balance Road. And we managed to track down the plans of that house. And we actually worked out where the operations room would be at the back. You also had the 2 apartments that they both owned, but they also would have a bar down at the bottom of the road called the Grave Maurice. And that was on Whitechapel Road. It's not a betting shop, but you still have the old sign saying Grave Maurice at the top.
The Grave Maurice. That sounds like a trendy London wine bar, my friend.
Yeah. And it's only next door to the infamous Blind Beggar pub. That's probably the most famous pub in the East End of London after the 10 Bells for Jack the Ripper. But the Blind Beggar pub still hosts Krays charity events to this day. And you can go down there. It's hosted by a woman called Maureen Flanagan. And she was the hairdresser who used to cut Violet Kray's hair.
Right.
And she had an affair with Charlie Kray. And basically, you go down there, you meet up all the old ex-gangsters like Freddie Foreman. He's turned up there, and Chris Lambriani. I mean, this is Chris Lambriani who actually carried the body of Jack the Hat McVitie out of the house to put in the back of the car to try and hide it. We are just sitting there in a seat talking to this guy. It's interesting characters. And I think that's what it's all about. 1960s, we have this kind of nostalgic look of the old school, the shirts and ties. And in a way, a lot of us are fascinated with gangsters of the past because we believe that they somehow had a better moral code than what we have today.
Yeah.
Back in the day, no women, no kids.
Yeah.
You could leave your door unlocked at night. You couldn't have it today, Well, so maybe there's a fascination there.
You just hit on something really good because, I mean, we think about, and listen, again, I'm based in Marbella, it's an interesting place to do business, but you think about what the 60s is like in London, all right? And it's a kicking out of the establishment. It's all very modern. Young people have got money. We've got the sexual revolution in full swing. And people like David Bailey are taking pictures of, obviously, Gene Shrimpton, Twiggy, the Beatles, and the Krays, and also their older brother as well, of course, Charlie. And that is a picture and a half, just because of the understated menace and the fact that they do this. I mean, can you imagine going up to? I was going to mention a few names there, but I better not because they know me. But if you were to go to certain crime families, currently based in the Middle East, and ask for a picture, they'd probably dangle you out of the nearest window.
Absolutely, 100%. And this is our fascination with the Kray Twins. They did court the limelight. They were quite fascinated with old American-style movies. You get the Humphrey Bogarts, the James Cagney movies. They would get themselves dressed up very smart. They'd have their hair slicked back. And, of course, they're twins. Yeah. So, again, it's like, oh, here come the twins. And they were very famous in their boxing years as well. Everybody knew them in the East End. So when they started to take on the clubs over in the West End, they were just known as twins over at Razzmatazz. And yes, when David Bailey comes along, he captures this wonderful image of the twins, and it becomes almost the iconic 1960s representation of gangsterism, but also glitz and gangsters. In a way, they were like in years to come, you had John Gotti.
Yeah.
John Gotti in America, and he was always courting the limelight. He was all very fashionable and trendy.
The Dapper Don, etc.
The Dapper Don. But in the 60s, we had that already with the Kray Twins, and they were like representing the first time ever gangsterism moved out of the seediness and the underworld into the what you'd almost expect Don Corleone or the gangsters all to be coming around, and it made gangsterism quite popular, I think.
Yeah.
Of course, the rich, well, famous people, they love to hang out with these rough people. In a way, kind of look who I'm with.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. They looked up to them. But at the same time, the Krays also looked up to them as well. So everybody's looking up to each other.
There's a really interesting, isn't there, crossover, because you look at, pictures of a friend of mine's father, who was Stanley Baker. He's got a picture with Charlie Richardson, who is not one of the Kray twins, by the way. That's a completely different firm. But then you got pictures of Ronnie, or is it Reggie, with Lord Boothby, for example, hanging out at Ronnie, at a London party, shall we say. Barbara Windsor obviously is hanging out with Ronnie Knight. I mean, there's that whole crossover between celebrity because they're involved in casinos, and that, there's a couple of points off that one. Are the Maltese running the casinos at this point, or is it Cypriots, or what's the situation?
The Maltese brothers were running around the London, but they were kind of rivals to the Krays, and they did try to muscle in on a few clubs. But there's quite a famous story in the book where Ronnie Kray, basically, they come in to get some money, the Maltese brothers, and they come in to get some cash. And Ronnie pulls out this big bayonet. He kept behind the bar, and I think he cut one of them, then ran out the street, and the rest of them in the car. And he basically started jumping all over his car, and they're trying to start the car, and he's slashing and banging the window. I mean, Ronnie Kray wasn't scared of anyone because of maybe his mental condition, but he was probably, these kind of stories are what kind of made the Krays famous. They were very brutal, and probably much more brutal than was necessary, but it got attention.
Yeah, but the thing, I just want to say, because if you look at the limits to their grounds, because I just mentioned them in passing, but Charlie Richardson, the Richardson gang, they're in South London, scrap metal and all that, and they are kind of known as being if you're going to have, what on one side, you're going to have the yin to its yang or whatever. But the Richardsons are in no way, with apologies to anybody who may be listening who's related to that family, they're not as glamorous as the Krays. You would, if you had a picture of Charlie Richardson, you wouldn't know unless you knew him. But because the Krays are dominating.
That's right. If you took a picture of Charlie and Eddie Richardson, Eddie's still alive. But yes, you don't get that kind of same aura that comes off them. I think the Krays just looked better, dressed better, and had kind of thing that it has that presence. I think presence is the word we're looking for, and that kind of oozes out. And I think they're just kind of unique in gangsterism, and I think in a way. They're very popular in UK history because we look at America, and America had these wonderful gangsters. I say wonderful, but iconic gangsters: Al Capone, Lucky Luciano, John Dillinger. You got Bonnie and Clyde. So in a way, the Kray Twins is our American gangsters here in the UK, because when you talk to people in America, and they talk about Al Capone, and then they ask you, well, what have you got in the UK? We always turn around and say, they're Kray Twins. Like, almost like the Kray Twins just capped it all off. We only needed the Kray Twins. That was it. And I think it's amazing. And I do put in the book, I say, they may not have built a lasting empire, but they built a lasting legacy, a legend. And perhaps in the end of the day, that's probably what they would have wanted.
Well, if you look at it, because if you think about the crimes and you think, horrendous, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but they serve their times. They're not let out in a couple of years because they're the Krays. Right. Because, despite, okay, maybe not Ronnie, but Reggie certainly, they had every...
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer, and I mean, it's a bit controversial. I do believe Reggie, especially, was more of a political prisoner. They kept him in on purpose because they wanted to show society, here's what happens when you try and become like the Kray Twins. Reggie should have done probably, I would say, 12 years, and the rest out on license. If they got him for the one murder of Jack the Hat, another gangster, basically. Yeah. And a lot of the movies and depictions have Jack the Hat as this small, weedy, weak character. He wasn't. He was a big guy. He was a handy guy. He probably could have had a right go at the Krays, and he did during the fight in the party. So these were other gangsters, and I think if it was today, Reggie would probably have got about 12 years.
If you think
he would
about
have got a life sentence.
Yeah.
He would have got a life sentence, but he would be out after 12 years on license. They kept him in for the full 30 years. And even when he was an old man, they still hadn't really decategorized him.
Yeah.
So they had no intention of letting him out for a good 5 years anyway after that. Only when he was on his deathbed did they go, okay, we'll let you out on compassionate leave.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, McVicker, for example, who was did huge crimes, and yet he's out and he's idolized and he's, rehabilitated. He becomes a very good writer. But, again, the movies, British movies and the gangsters, I mean, because Roger Daltrey plays him in that film. And of course...
That's right.
And of course, I mean, the Krays everywhere from the Spandau Ballet's, the Kent Boys to Tom Hardy twice have played him.
That's right. I enjoyed both movies. Obviously, the iconic 1990s one's a bit more impressionable because I was younger then.
Yeah.
I did enjoy the Tom Hardy movie. That was quite good. There was some really good scenes. He played a brilliant part in that movie. But then, if we look at the original Krays movie with the Kemp brothers, that's on the same par, I would say, with almost the Long Good Friday. There's iconic British, and you had some wonderful actors in there as well. I mean, the mother was played by, oh God.
Yeah, I know. I've lost it completely. Yeah. But also
Billy Whitelaw.
That's the
Billy
one.
Whitelaw.
But also, because of course the governor's in there, isn't he? Briefly, because she gets through the rings and goes, and that's what's his face? Oh, come on, the big bad gang, the bouncer, the most feared bouncer in London. He's in there as well. The governor. Anyway. But it's an incredibly...
Yes, I know it is.
Yeah, we both know. It'll come into me. Anyway, but also, it's an incredibly well-shot movie in the way that they handle the suicide of Reggie's wife. Frances, yeah. Yes, it's really it's really affecting. And it could have been laid on with a trowel, but it's really, really well done. The thing is, though, and let's just quickly get this one out of the way, because we do... I mean, it's all very easy to go... I know that people go on about code, but, a very good friend of mine who unfortunately passed away last year, and he was on that scene, and he famously said to me, look, a lot of people who do this line of work, and he did that line of work because we can't do anything else. He basically said we've failed at doing anything else. That's the only thing that we're good at, right? Yeah. And I always remember that because he was telling about some run-ins, and he said, you must understand that there is, to a certain extent, there is no honour amongst thieves. Some of them will sort of stab you in the back if they can, especially in the modern days. So, do we run a risk of that whole Guy Ritchie, Mockney, only they love their mums, etc.? Because there is violence in there, and there is. I mean, not on the scale that we see today with random knife crime and shootings, etc. But are we in danger, my friend, of glamorising to an extent where they become almost like Dick Turpin, for example?
Yeah, I totally understand that, and that is where the myth and the legend overtakes the reality. Yes, I would hazard a guess. In their time, in all gangsters' time, there is violence among themselves. Yes, I do believe they would stab each other in the back to get one over. They come from a different world, but it's almost like if we can't see it, we're okay with it. But I guarantee there's people on the receiving end who would definitely disagree and say, oh, God, it's terrible. But yes, it's like if I said modern gangsters today, if we watch what are modern gangsters today, we wouldn't like modern gangsters today. We'd go, oh, God, they're all thugs and violent and awful. Look what they're doing. We see them on TikTok. We see them all around. Oh, send that man to jail. That is probably what they said back then as well.
Yeah.
But we have that passage of time, the 30 or 40 years, where all we're doing is looking at old black and white photographs and reading stories. And we kind of go, oh, well, we're not there, but it sounds great.
I'm going to be in trouble here, but the one thing that does stay between gangsters of all times, coming up to the present day, morning Tyson, is boxing. Because, the gangsters love a bit of boxing, and boxing is central to the Krays, isn't it? And they're handy. And are the boxing gyms still there? Is obviously my question.
They are indeed.
Right.
Like boxing, everybody in the East End of London, in that particular part of London, was into boxing. Boxing was seen as a way of getting out of the poverty of the East End. You must remember, the areas which the Krays were brought up in were terrible for poverty. People really are broke. They had to do anything to get by. well, as the grandfather of the Krays said, there's only two ways out of the East End, basically robbing or fighting, and that's boxing. So boxing was the big thing, and you had the York Hall, one of the most famous boxing buildings, arenas, events, still there in the end of Bethnal Green Road. The Krays fought there. I went in there, got all the photographs. You've also got the famous Repton Boys Boxing Club, and that's right down across the road from where they lived at Balance Road. That's still there. Been in there a few times. Great, wonderful place. Still one of the most professional boxing clubs in London. And it actually is used for movies. So if you watch like Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, they're in there playing the card game. And if you're not into like gangster movies, but you like your music videos, like Take That, it only takes a minute, was recorded in there as well. So it's,
blimey, wow.
And there's a new series called The Gentleman.
Yes.
I don't know if you watched that one. Well, that's filmed in the actual Repton Boys Boxing Club as well.
So
Coach is in there.
Do people mind sort of, I mean, if somebody goes wandering around the area with your fine tome in their hand, I mean, you don't go, you can't just walk in and go, I say, my fellow, did you know the Krays? Did you shoot anybody? I mean, what's the atmosphere like down there?
Definitely not. Most of the time, you'll probably find somebody will tell you the story. The East Enders love a good story, and if you walk into any pub in the East End and you find the oldest person in the room, I guarantee you, after a couple of drinks, they'll be telling you some stories about the Krays.
Yeah.
And because it's kind of weird because the East End of London, they love their villains, but not like just love talking about them. I mean, that's why Jack the Ripper it's still one of the most popular walking tours in London to this day. People just want to keep talking about Jack the Ripper. Yeah. Then, of course, after Jack the Ripper, we now got the Kray Twins.
I used to drink in the Eagle in London, and that's on the court. That's on one of the courts so we'd be sitting there on a Friday, and a whole bunch of Americans would come by because in the corner opposite where the Eagle pub was one of his victims was found. Lenny McLean, by the way. The governor.
That's him. That's the one. Yeah.
So what?
He was a good.
Yeah.
He was a good fighter back in his day. Eh?
Well, not only that. I mean, his autobiography is quite something. I mean, his autobiography is a book and a half.
I think him. Didn't he and Charlie Kray open a pub called The Governor?
Yeah, I think that.
It is, yeah.
Blimey, can you imagine that one? What are you hoping that I could talk to you about this until probably about the weekend, and we all get thrown out the pubs? But what are you hoping that people are going to go take? It's the fact that this is a living history, isn't it? And this is a living popular culture and social history.
It's the Kray story always seems to be in need of constant retelling. So it's one of those stories that isn't going to go away. And I think in a way, I wrote this part in the book, and if you don't mind, I can read this little section of the book for you.
Yeah, go for it. Absolutely, you have the floor, my friend. Sorry, one of my listeners is sending in pictures of. He was on Whitechapel Road last week. He's just sent me pictures of the Repton Boxing Club inside and outside, and also and the Blind Beggar as well. If you look up, you can see on my screen.
I see the Blind Beggar. Yeah,
there you go.
I'm very good friends with the manager, the guy called Dave Dobson.
Right.
Oh, yes.
Repton. That's my man in London. Thank you, Dee, for sending that in. Indeed. There you go, the inside as well.
Yeah. Now, have you got my book? Did you tell me to get my book? Yeah. Oh, well, go get the book.
Read your bit then. Off you go.
Yeah, so I basically ended the book with this kind of words going, one thing we've learned from being on the trail of the Kray Twins, all things must change. And East London is rapidly transforming every year beyond recognition in some parts. Demolition, modern development continues to replace the warren of pubs and clubs that formed a backdrop to their activities. And one day it'll all be gone. However, we are also reminded that the East End of London is as much attitude and tradition as it is architecture. And in the end, during their years of freedom, the twins etched a lasting chapter in the stories that will forever be told there.
Read that bit about attitude. The East End is what? Attitude and...
Basically, yes.
That's just great. Just read that again. That's wonderful.
So, we're also reminded that the East End of London is as much attitude and tradition as it is architecture.
Brilliant. Love it. Love it, absolutely.
So that's what we're trying to get across. Saying, the buildings may change, but the people still stay the same, and their attitudes still stay the same. Even right now in my local pub when I'm in London, it's called the White Hart. There's a barmaid behind the bar. Absolute pure Cockney, born and bred in London. Young girl too. And you know what? I think it's wonderful. It has a great history. The accents there. And they've got stories about their grandparents. And I think this is brilliant. You know what I mean? It's this kind of thing. And while that goes on, I think all these wonderful stories, mixed with good and bad, will continue to thrive around this town. It's a fascinating area.
I'm just imagining the conversation between pure Cockney and your own rather distinctive accent, my friend.
Yes. I have a very thick, broad Northern Irish accent.
Brilliant stuff.
This is me speaking very slowly.
Exactly.
In the sixth gear.
My English teacher was from Belfast. Trust me on this one, so it's okay. Exactly.
Yeah.
Listen, this book is called On the Trail of the Kray Twins. Go online to our virtual bookstore. Great front cover. Click on that, and a well-known distribution service will have it winging its way to you. Richard, if people want to find you online and say lovely things to you, where can they find you?
I have a Facebook page called Richard Charles Cobb Author. Facebook. I'm always on there. Give me a shout. Give me a message.
Richard Charles Cobb, author. Listen, I thought it was going to be fun. I didn't know this much fun. The book is called On the Trail of the Kray Twins. It's by Richard Charles Cobb. Thank you so much for your time today.
No problem. Thank you, sir. Have a good one. Enjoy yourself.